Hello, welcome back to another edition of Green TV. This is my Meet the Solutionaries series, and I am really thrilled to bring you one of the most exciting and young and inspirational solutionaries I've come across in the few months that I've been doing interviews for Green TV. His name is Simon Bernard, and I hope I've said that correctly. He is French. And we are also joined by my longtime friend, Jill Abelson, who is their US Communications Director. I met Jill back a couple of decades ago, maybe, when she was working for the EPA and I was doing mostly trash talk. And we became fast friends and have stayed in touch. And of course, we've moved, from being concerned about garbage to global warming, which is what we called it back then about 15 years ago. And now there are so many environmental challenges and so many pressures on our poor planet. And the mainstream public is just now really becoming aware of those issues. And one of the big ones that's really just arisen in the last year or two is the problem of plastic pollution. And of course, our oceans are threatened by so much acidification from all the greenhouse gases that go into the ocean. It's a carbon sink sucking it up. It's not just the atmosphere that is taking all the hits. Also overfishing, a huge problem internationally, and plastic pollution, last but not least, and a few more. But today we're going to talk about plastic pollution, but we're going to talk about what one group of young explorers and innovators are doing, passionate activists about this problem. So Simon, welcome to Green TV.
Thank you. Hello, Betsy.
So you are part of this great journey called Plastic Odyssey, getting underway, I guess, on the oceans next year, coming up quickly, 2022. But this has been in the planning stages for some 5 years, long before, or at least a few years before it was kind of household knowledge that we have a problem with plastic in our oceans. I remember reporting some years ago that there was going to soon be more plastic than plankton in our seas. And I thought, wow, that says a lot. I don't know if that's the case yet, if that's still off in the distance, but I know there's way too much plastic out there. And we're going to talk about the causes of that, but mostly what Plastic Odyssey is setting out to do. Sounds very ambitious and exciting.
Yes, sure. That's, as you say, that's a great problem, great issue. And when we started 5 years ago, it was just the beginning of understanding that there is an issue in the ocean, and then getting to know better about how we can address this issue. And yeah, hopefully today we are everyone is conscious about this problem. It's in every mouth. So we know that there is a problem, and now that we need to know how to tackle it and how we can have the better impact on the pollution. And it's not that easy, because at first when we heard about the project, we thought, okay, we need to clean up the ocean. We need to take vessel boats and just
scoop it up, just scoop it up, real easy, right?
and actually it's not that easy, because the plastic is not floating, it degrades into microparticles. And now today the scientific community is well aware of the problem and the issue, and it's more complex than what we thought at the beginning. And that's what scientists they call it the mystery of plastic, because we don't know where it is actually. We know that we have put a lot of plastic in the ocean, like 200 million tons probably, but we don't know where it is exactly, because when we sample the ocean, we only find less than 1% of this pollution. So we don't know where it all ended up. So probably on the bottom of the seabeds, also degraded into microparticles, but that's a big mystery. The only thing we know is that if we want to stop this pollution, we need to turn off the tap. We need to stop the plastic flow into the ocean, and that really is acting ashore in all the cities that today are just surrounded by wastes and landfills. So that's really the key issue today.
About 5 years ago, I interviewed the founders of Five Gyres. I don't know if you've come across Anna Cummins and her husband, Dr. Marcus Erickson. And that really kind of got out there, that there were 5 gyres, 5 basically, giant blobs of plastic out there in the oceans. Is that still seen as the case? Has it grown from there? It seems like we don't hear that expression so much, like perhaps it has gone beyond.
Yeah, we even call it a continent of plastic in French. And that's the problem, is that, of course, there is gyres, but it's only an accumulation of microparticles. And to give you some figures, if you collect all the integrity of the gyre, the Pacific garbage patch, what we call it a garbage patch, you have the same quantity of plastic that what ends up in the ocean every week. So it's very little. I mean, of course, there is an accumulation of plastic in these gyres, but it doesn't reflect at all the problem of plastic pollution in the ocean, because it's really a small quantity of plastic floating. It's just there is more, obviously, microparticles there than elsewhere in the ocean, but that's not where the problem is at all. And we shouldn't think about how can we clean up these gyres. I mean, yes, there is a bit of plastic there, but as compared to what is already in the ocean, it's very little.
So before we get to your incredible solutions and some of the technology you're going to bring to this problem, where is the plastic coming from primarily in terms of geographically? I know that the US must be a big contributor.
Yeah, well, I actually quite recently we discovered that the US was quite a big contributor, because at first when we look at the richest countries like the US or Europe, we consider that the plastic is not going at sea, because we say that plastic is well managed, it's collected, and then it's stored like in landfills, but it's not going in nature. I mean, that's what we thought up to a recent study, but now we know that we export as the rich country, and the US export up to 1 million tons of waste to the developing world, where it's then unmanaged or mismanaged and end up in the ocean. So the contributions of the US to the global ocean pollution is about 1 million tons per year, which is almost 10% of the problem, actually. And the rest is coming from the low to middle income countries, especially in Asia, but also Africa, where there is a lack of access to waste management, and where waste that is generated by every citizen basically is not collected and ends up in landfills, and then eventually in the ocean or in the natural environment.
Now, plastic doesn't break down, just out on land. We know it'll be around for 1,000 years or so, which is why it's so crazy that we, water bottle, toss it, and the water took maybe 5 minutes to drink. Maybe the bottle will be around forever, pretty much. What does it do in the water? Does it break down? Because we've heard, that it's breaking down and getting inside of fish, which become, seafood for humans, and that we all now have microplastic in our bodies. Tell us, is it certain kinds of plastic act differently depending on what kind of conditions they're in?
It actually depends, first of all, of the density of plastic, because there are different types of plastic. And for example, the plastic bottle is made of PET, and PET actually sinks. So it can degrade if it floats. If the bottle cap is on, it can float and then degrade into microparticles. But otherwise, it can also sink to the bottom. And then as it's very cold and there is no sunlight, then it can stay forever there. So it's just like a plastic layer at the bottom of the seabed, probably.
I've seen pictures, some documentaries where there's just plastic bottles intact, maybe with the cap on, just bobbing on the sea floor, and it's among the fish.
Yeah, exactly.
And yes, so the problem is getting known. What happened? Was there one event that you can recall where people really started talking about it? I'm trying to trace it, but it just seemed like almost overnight that was everyone's concern, as it should be. And then we'll talk about how it's related to the other big concern, climate change, and then what you're doing about it.
Sure. Well, I can't remember when it all started. It seems to me that it's been 2 to 3 years that everyone is starting to talk about it a lot. I mean, 5 years ago, there was Boyan Slat from Ocean Cleanup, was a young engineer that started to look at the problem and starting to launch studies and try to clean up the ocean. So that was the first initiative. I think one of the first initiatives that really raised awareness.
Was he the one? Was he the one with the large boom that went out there
Yeah.
and tried to catch it?
Yeah, exactly. That's the one. And thanks to him and thanks to his scientific teams, we know that today there is very few plastic to collect in gyres. So I mean, he started that at the beginning with the intention of, I mean, he thought we should go and clean up the ocean. There is plastic in gyres. And then he realized that, yes, we can maybe clean up a few pieces, but it's not enough. So we need also to act before. And so thanks to him, we know that today we cannot just clean up the ocean, unfortunately. And we need to do more and before.
We're going to talk about prevention, but now tell us what the Plastic Odyssey is going to be doing.
So basically, it really it all started when I was back in 2016. I was merchant marine officer, sailing on big commercial vessels, and I stopped in Dakar in Senegal. And that's where I really saw the problem, because as I was saying, at sea, you cannot see anything. You cannot, you don't have islands of plastic. So you're not shocked by the plastic that is floating, really. But when you stop in a country with waste management problem, then, well, you realize that there is a lot of plastic flowing in the ocean. So it all started from this experience in Dakar. And then coming back from Dakar, I thought, okay, if there is a lot of ingenuity in Senegal, that's well known for that. You can recycle almost everything. You can recycle aluminum cans, wood, steel, but not plastic, because the knowledge is not there yet. And I thought, okay, if we can find ways, simple technologies to turn the plastic waste into a local resource, then we can help people make a living, and we can turn this trash into cash somehow, and help people well, make a living, thus collect the plastic and avoiding it to be left in the nature, because it has a value. So that was the starting point, I would say.
A win-win-win. I love those. And was it you who developed the technology? Are you going to be shredding the plastic, or what kind of machinery will you have on board? And how big is this vessel?
Well, so yeah, the vessel is a 40 meters long research vessel. It's not there to clean up the ocean. As I was saying, it's more like an ambassador, a laboratory, a showroom of solutions that can be copied and replicated in countries with a lack of waste management. So the idea is really to showcase, to demonstrate solutions, but then to help entrepreneurs to replicate them and to use them. So it's quite simple technologies, basically, to shred the plastic, melt it, and then turn it into new products. It can be tiles for the roofs. It can be tiles for pavements, or also transport pallets. You know, it's usually made of planks, wooden planks, and we cut trees to do that. So if we just make pallets out of plastic waste, we can also avoid deforestation. So that can be a good way of transforming waste into a resource. And we also work on pipes for sanitations. So different products.
So how much of this can be done actually on the vessel, and how large did you say it was?
It's 40 meters long.
14
it's about
meters.
10 meters wide. So it's quite huge. We have 450 square meters of recycling lab on board, and we have almost 10 technologies. So we are able, with all the different prototypes, to experiment a lot of things and develop new ways to recycle the plastic, basically.
And how are you going to be getting onto your vessel?
And so the vessel is planned to set sail next year from Marseille, and then we plan to go to Africa. So the first call actually will be Lebanon, where there is quite a big issue at the moment. So if we can help, that can be a very great pilot project there. And then we are going to Africa, then South America, and then eventually Asia, Southeast Asia. So that's the 3 continents the most impacted by plastic pollution.
And are you going to then take the plastic from those ports and do this technology on it? And will you be picking up any along the way?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, we would have loved just being able to clean up the environment and say, okay, we have a boat, we can have many other ones and just clean up the ocean, but it's no, it's not possible at all. So we are just not even trying to, because it can be even worse. If you collect waste, you can also collect fish or biodiversity. So we just don't want to do that. I think that's not the best way to do. So it's really more a way to experiment, to train local entrepreneurs and be able to raise awareness, so that to showcase solution actually as what you are doing now, to show people that solution exists, that it is easy to replicate at low cost, and then everyone can do that almost, and become a recycler, a local entrepreneur, to treat this big issue.
So how much time on average do you think you and your crew will be spending at each of these sites? And I imagine you have counterparts there who will be very much looking forward to welcoming you.
We are planning 30 stopovers, and each stopover will last 3 weeks almost. So it's not that long. So during 3 weeks, you cannot do a lot. I mean, you cannot implement recycling center machines, but you can just at least plant a seed and convince people to replicate, convince people to launch an initiative. And that's really what we want to do, is communicate and convince people. But then when the boat will leave, there is another team that will go on the field and do the follow-up, so that we will be sure that machines will be set up, and that initiatives will be launched.
How will they pay for these machines? Are you raising money for that?
Yeah, well, that's one of the big challenge. I mean, that's not the most difficult one, I think. The most difficult one is to find a viable business model. I mean, if we manage to find a business model, if we know what product we can sell, if we know there is a market for that, it can be pipes, can be tiles for the roof, then we can easily find investors, like impact investors. There are quite many of them. We are also looking for different ways, like plastic credit, or different ways to fund this project. So that's not the most difficult part, I think.
Very exciting and very ambitious, and be very, very, very eager to watch your progress. This is going to be going from when to when? Do you have a beginning and end point, or is this just the launch? And if it works, like it's a pilot, it will be expanded, because I imagine there's no shortage of need.
Well, yeah, there is on the one hand, there is this expedition that will go around the world. So it's planned to last for 3 years. But on the other hand, there is this implementation of machines and recyclers, and that's, hopefully it's not gonna last only 3 years. We are planning to multiply all the initiatives, but eventually in a few decades, I hope we won't have a job. I think, I mean, if we manage to reduce the plastic, and hopefully we will run out of job. But yeah, they are.
Me too. I hope I can retire once the whole world is eco-literate and knows about all these problems, and we have all the solutions at least underway. I don't think they'll happen anytime soon, but there is a connection to climate change, plastic pollution. To me, the obvious one is just, it all comes from the same source, petroleum, our fossil fuels, obviously. And there's been a lot of talk about how, as the fossil fuel industry is going to have to, phase out their burning of coal, oil, gas, that they're turning to plastic. Besides that, what is the connection?
So there is, as you say, there is the impact of plastic production. There is a recent report actually that said that it is equivalent to the output of almost 200 coal-fired power stations. So that, I mean, there is huge impact on plastic production, but there is also a huge impact on waste treatment today, because how it's done, basically it's just incinerated like open fires. And so for that, that's a huge amount of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. It's the equivalent of 850 million tons of greenhouse gases this year. I mean, just by incineration of the plastic waste in countries where there is just no other way today, because it's full of plastic, so just people burn it openly in the streets, and that's a huge impact on climate change, obviously.
I would imagine there's chemicals and toxins in there as well as
Also,
the greenhouse gases. Yeah. So
yeah, also the impact on health is really terrific.
mhm. So tell us where are your sources coming from? You say there's impact investors. Are they looking for a quick return on their investment, or are there people who really do care about this and you think are in it for the long term? Because this is not as ambitious as this project is. It's not going to, as we just kind of noted, it's going to get cleaned up overnight.
Yeah, we have two sources of funding. I mean, the first one is via sponsorship. So because of this vessel, the communication we have around, and all the R&D that is made to develop the machines in open source. So, giving free patents so that it can be replicated. So that's one source of funding for the team, the Plastic Odyssey team, and the experiment. And the source of funding, as I said, to fund the local recyclers is it's more impact investors, let's say. I mean, the idea is that they will have a return on investment, but they will not have I mean, the gain is not a lot, so it's obviously impact investors.
Slow money will be one of the factors, I hope, not the quick turnaround, but the people who actually do care. So prevention is obviously a big part of this, and it doesn't seem like we're really much closer, even though there is more awareness. I happen to be in Florida right now and have been staying in various hotels, and there's no recycling anywhere to be seen. And that, of course, is not the cure-all, certainly for plastic, but in some ways it just seems like reaching the masses with this needed consciousness is an uphill battle in and of itself. Counting on the fossil fuel industry to stop making plastic like they've been making, gas, coal, and oil, and hurting their own profits, there's proven that they're not altruistic. So what do you see as the drivers that are either underway or still needed to just begin to turn the tide, literally and figuratively?
It's not easy. I mean, we are thinking about it every day, almost thinking, okay, what is the best way to change behaviors and reduce the amount of plastic we consume? And actually, we don't have the answer yet, but we are looking for it. We have set up scientific programs, not on technology and engineering, but also on social sciences and behavioral sciences. So understanding in each country why we consume plastic and what is the relationship to waste. So that's something we are doing together with the recycling. We are understanding why we consume plastic, and so how we can change behaviors in each country. And obviously it's not the same way to raise awareness and to change behavior, because we don't have the same reason to use plastic in Dhaka or in Indonesia or in the US. So we need to better understand first why we use plastic, and obviously the concept of waste is quite recent. It's something that didn't exist 100 years ago. I mean, the concept of waste is something that is not natural. So we need to understand that before giving lessons and raising awareness, as we would do probably here in Europe or in the US. So like shaming people, so that's something we want to do. And also we work with on educational program for children, raising awareness to just explain what we are doing with this expedition. So we have a team doing that and working on plastic reduction, so that we have the two aspects of the problem, reducing and then recycling.
I can't recall if you said China was one of your stops, but I remember seeing a documentary at Sundance Film Festival of these children. I can't remember the town, literally living in mountains of plastic. That just stuck with me, and I wish everybody could see it. It might make them think twice about buying that beverage in a plastic bottle. Of course, plastic was successful because it was so convenient, but convenient clashes with conservation. But we in America are very good at also very good at exporting our problems, be it plastic or other things, and so out of sight, out of mind. But it needs to be brought forth, to remind people, certainly Americans, that this is not something that will ever go away. Mm-hmm. And the costs are sometimes to other people in other countries, even if it's not, harming our own. It is, it's littered everywhere, but that's not the biggest problem. The plastic gets into the, streams and waterways, goes into the ocean, and we're talking about the impacts there, but it's also a big problem on land, clearly.
No, that's for sure. And China was, used to be one of the main country to import plastic waste, but then like a few years ago they decided to stop, so they are not importing plastic anymore, but other countries are doing that. So I think the US is talking with Kenya, I think, and trying to deal with Kenya to export plastic there. So obviously some waste will continue to go out, and that's something we need to raise awareness about. So that we consume less, we reduce the amount of waste we produce, and we probably can treat it in each country rather than just exporting the problem.
It's almost like President Biden in this country should have a plastic czar, someone who just focuses on this problem, because there are many aspects to this problem. And there's a Walmart nearby, and I hardly ever shop at Walmart, but I want to go in there just to see, and I'm sure I'm going to see a lot of plastic, just like the typical big store in America, where the majority of, citizens get we're consumers. And that's the problem, is we don't see the cost as consumers of our habits. And it's got to change. And I hope you can do so much to raise awareness. I hope you're making a documentary, because I'm sure it will be an interesting and informative and inspiring adventure that you're embarking on.
Yeah, we are planning to do one, actually.
Good. Yeah. So, Jill, is there anything that in our brief conversation together we've missed? Because I know there's a lot of interesting aspects to this.
I was going to point out something related to just this last couple minutes of discussion, which is that you're right, Betsy, that plastic pollution and climate change are now emerging as like the issues of the day, the hot button issues of the day. And there's a reckoning around that. And I would also say some similarities across the two issues, in that there are environmental justice and, frankly, environmental fairness issues associated with each of these problems as well, in that they are impacting the most vulnerable people, here in the country, and also around the world in developing countries, where the impacts are starting to pile up. So what's really encouraging about Simon's work and the work of NGOs and scientists working on plastic pollution is sort of elevating the level to a point of higher consciousness, and a point of understanding that it's not just the waste generation, but it's the social and economic and environmental impacts that are going to last for generations. So this is something that's very interesting about the two, that we see the impacts and the effects are affecting the people who are sort of least equipped to manage it. And there's a collective responsibility around that, and an opportunity as well.
The health aspect alone, and it's very parallel to those who are suffering the most from the effects of climate change, those in small island nations, poor countries, Africa feeling a worsened drought because of our emissions in the Western world primarily, are the ones who contributed least, feeling it first and worst. So, and it is all connected. And I'm so glad you're doing this, because we need solutions like this. We need people like you, Simon, and your crew to think outside the box. I mean, this is the most important news there is, which is why we are doing Green TV, because the mainstream news networks don't seem to think it's worth more than a mention occasionally on Earth Day, or when there's a climate summit or a big scary report, and then it's back to our regularly scheduled programming. But we want to get more Americans and people around the world, World Wide Web, to tune into their environment. And there's nothing more precious than our planet. It is under siege by us. We didn't necessarily mean to destroy the home, the only home we have, but it's what's happened. It's the consequence. And this is sort of, hopefully, like you said, a reckoning, an awakening. We need to wake up and smell the carbon and stop the plastic addiction. Because even though it may have been a solution 50 years ago, remember The Graduate, Dustin Hoffman famously saying the future is plastics, like the future was cars, and that helped us be a lot more mobile. And certainly we've gotten, a lot of progress from the energy that's come from greenhouse gases, from fossil fuels, but the greenhouse gases that have come along with it, like the plastic problem, unforeseen perhaps, but very much visible now. And the next step is doing something about it. Your kitty cat's enjoying this interview, Jill. Back and forth. So any parting thoughts before we close?
No, but you're right. It is an addiction. We have an addiction to plastic. We have an addiction to energy, and we need to be conscious about that so that we can change and act, I think. But yeah.
We have an addiction to convenience, but it's such a cost, and slowing down would do everybody a lot of good. Easier said than done with our tech crazy screen loving world, but there's consequences of that, all the energy that's being used. And then while we're talking about plastic pollution and oceans and climate being the big issues, there's also a third one, and that's extinction, but that's not for today. But it's all connected, right? Biodiversity, habitat loss, and there's also a connection to the pandemic. It's our destruction of wildlife habitats, constant development in China and elsewhere around the world, that we're interfering with what nature does best. And it's not nice to fuel Mother Nature. And that's why we're going to see more viruses, and we're seeing more variants, because we're not really getting to the root causes of the problems, but we are here as a platform to discuss them. That's at least something we can start to do, because I don't know how we solve all these issues if we don't understand them and what's causing them. What are the factors? So thank you for joining us, for taking time. We'll be following you. We're going to have a website where we can track your progress.
Yeah, we have a website. We have all the social media, so don't hesitate to follow the journey and this exploration.
Thank you, and good luck, bon voyage. We will check back with you maybe along the way. I'm sure Jill will keep us surprised. And that does it for this edition of Meet the Solutionaries on Green TV. Want to thank our wonderful editor, CFA Weiss, and also our founder, John Lake, who had the wisdom to purchase this URL many years ago, greentv.com. And it's offered a platform for me, someone who has been wanting to talk about these issues 24/7. So our plans are very ambitious. We hope to be kind of a green news network, a GNN, where you can tune in anytime, day or night, and see these conversations. Aren't they interesting? Aren't they important? Aren't they inspiring? Night or day. And there's so many topics, and they're all connected. So that's our goal. We hope you'll make a donation to Green TV. At this point, we're all volunteers, but we have big, ambitious plans. And please tell your friends about it, and share the word about Green TV, and subscribe. That'll help us get to be live 24/7 even sooner. See you next time.